I'm going to set a list dash style colon none, and that will take the bullet items out. And I think actually we'll set the padding to 0. So I'm going to set a padding colon 0, and we'll space out the images, the smaller images, using margins. So I'm going to set a margin colon, and I'm going to set that to 0 pixels on the top, 0 pixels on the right. We'll set it to 2 pixels on the bottom, so it'll push the images from the bottom by 2 pixels, and 5 pixels on the left. Now press refresh, and it looks okay. Now it looks slightly different on that bottom one there. It looks like it hasn't moved over correctly, but if we preview that inside of a browser, we'll see that it's actually spaced out quite nicely. Okay, so we're looking quite good. We're looking very good, in fact, and we'll need to start adding our scripts now that will animate the rotating product tabs. Okay, now I know many beginners have problems setting up script hooks, so we're going to type it in manually so that you can manually browse for those files. So we're going to go to the top of the head of our document and create a space between our CSS style sheet and the bottom of the head, and we're going to type in script space type, and we're going to make it text / JavaScript. We're going to type in src, and we're going to browse for our first script. So I've just clicked on browse, and we're going to go into the JavaScript file, the JavaScript folder there, JS folder, and we're going to hook up the yeti-min, which is a JS file, and that's set up now. I'm just going to close the script off. Make sure you copy exactly what I'm doing, and that has now attached the script to our document. Okay, so if you look up here next to our source and CSS, you'll see that there's the script, so you know it's definitely attached there. That's brilliant. Okay, now what we need to do is I've made a file up, a notepad file, and that will have a script call, and we're going to place a script call just at the bottom underneath the closing unordered list, and I'm going to open up the text document called script text and script call, sorry, and we're going to copy the script call, close down the file, and I'm going to paste that in just underneath the unordered list, but obviously still inside our product images div tag. Now it's a variable and it's searching for the tabs, especially if they have an ID of product images, and it's set it to an interval to rotate at 5 seconds. Now it's also looking for the unordered list for the extension of -nav, which is what we applied to that unordered list. That's how it's going to synchronize those images. So I've attached it, and all we have to wait is for that image to swap over, and it is doing that every 5 seconds. Okay, now right now though we don't have any visual clues to say that it's swapping out in our smaller images, so we need to create some rollover effects, some hover effects there, and we'll lower the opacity and raise the opacity when it's in focus on one of the main images. Now for the rest of the tutorial, I'm going to set the interval to 2 seconds so I don't have to wait so long for it to swap out those images. Okay, and we'll start creating our hover effects for these smaller images, so that they'll basically, as it rotates, it will add a black border to each image that's in focus. Okay, so I'm going to go into the CSS file, and what I'm going to do is create the rest of the CSS rules that we need. And the first rule I'm going to create is for the IMG tags, and so it's product images -nav li img, open and close curly braces. So we're going to target the images inside of the list items. I'm going to set a border colon 1 pixel solid £CCC, which is a grey colour, and press refresh. Now you'll see inside the design view that it's added those borders around those smaller images, so we're starting to get our visual clues already. Now I'm going to set a margin colon, and I'll set the margin to 0. I'm going to set the opacity colon, and that will be set to an opacity of 0.5, so it's going to reduce it down by 50%. So we'll just check that in the browser to make sure that the opacity has been lowered, and it has been. So next time we hover over the image, we're going to set an opacity so that when the main image is in focus, it's going to raise the opacity on the smaller image and create a nice visual clue there. So we'll go back into our CSS, and I'm going to set a pound product images with a capital I dash nav li img colon hover. So this is the hover on the image. So I'm going to set the border on the hover to 1 pixel solid pound 333, which is a much darker grey, and I'm going to raise the opacity up to, we can either make this 1 or 0.9 I'm going to put. So when we hover over a particular image, it's going to add a darker border, and it's going to raise the opacity on that image. So let's preview that in Firefox and hover over one of the images, and there we go. We can see that it actually brings it further into focus, raises the opacity, and that looks great. Okay, so I'd like to go back into the CSS now, and for our main image, when our main image is on show, I'd like the smaller counterpart image to also show with a darker border and a raised opacity. So we'll target the link tags inside of the unordered list that are active. So when it's active and the main image is on show, we'd like the smaller image to have an opacity, and the opacity is going to be equal to 0.9, and we'll set the border colon 1 pixel solid, and that'll be pound 333. So when it's active, when that main image is rotating through, we want the smaller image, the smaller counterpart image, to also show. There we go. So it's swapping out, and it's adding a black border, and it's rotating through. A great visual clue there to see what product image we are currently on. Now we'll still have and retain the hover effect, so we can hover over the rest of the images, and it will also add that border, but that's looking great now. Okay, we're looking really good. Okay, so far all of these effects have been created using a standard JavaScript file. Now we're going to hook up the jQuery library, and we're going to add an image tooltip. So I'd like you to go into the head of the document again and create a space between the CSS file and the last script that we set up, and we'll go back into the files panel, and we're going to click on the jQuery library hook, and I want you to copy and paste that code into that area inside of the head of the document. Now this is the Google hosted version, the Google hosted version of the jQuery library. So now I've pressed refresh, and that code has been added, as you'll see at the top of the panel there inside of our Dreamweaver page. Now let's type in script type, and again this will be text and JavaScript. I'm going to select the source, and we're going to attach our zoomer.js file. So I'm going to browse for that file, and that will be in the JS folder as well. So I'm going to click inside of the JS folder, and I'm going to click on the zoomer.js file. Double click on that. I'm going to close the angle bracket and close that script tag off. Okay, so we're going to have to create some extra code inside of our image tags in order to get that preview to work. So I'm going to find my first div with an ID of image1, and I'm going to surround the image tag with a link tag. Now it's going to be an A tag, it's going to be a class, and the class is going to be equal to preview, and that's what the script's going to look for, any link around an image with a class of preview. Now I'm going to create a named anchor, and I'm just going to detach my files panel now so I can show you how I'm hooking up this image. Now the image is in the folder, it's along my main site route, and it's in a folder called images, and the name of the image is image1.jpg. So I'm going to type into this named anchor, I'm going to type in images / image1.jpg, and that has now created an anchor for that image, so it will appear as a image tooltip. Now I'm going to close that image tag off, and then that's one completed. Now once I've pressed refresh, you'll see that inside of that main image area there's an anchor tag. That's the anchor, the named anchor that we just created there. Okay, so it's important you get the correct file path there for that image to show up, because that's how it's going to find it. Okay, now I'm going to have to do the same for all of my other images and create the same named anchor. Now it's going to be a link with a class of preview, and the named anchor is going to be images. So the folder, look for the folder called images, and inside of that images folder is the image2.jpg that I would like you to show in the preview zoomer tooltip. And I'm going to create the same one for the image 3, a class equals preview, and that will be a named anchor images slash image3.jpg. And lastly, we're going to find the div id image 4, and I am going to create the link tag around the image, and it's going to be a class of preview, and the named anchor will be images slash image4.jpg, and I'm going to close that image tag, that link tag, the A tag, off with a closing A. Okay, so we've created that now. Let's press refresh, and that should now animate the tooltip, the image tooltip for all of our images. They've all been anchored to the correct spot, and if I preview that in Firefox, we'll roll over the image and see what happens. Okay, so we've got our images appearing, but then it's not really in the place we'd like it to be, and the images are huge. So we'd like to reduce those images down to a more manageable size, and I think we'll create a nice little border with a shadow around the image as well. So you can see it's appearing at the bottom right hand screen, but that's no good to us. So we'll go back into our CSS file, and we'll start creating some CSS rules for our preview. So that'll be pound preview. Okay, so I'm going to set a background color of a white for the background of our image preview, the tooltip. I'm going to set a border 1 pixel solid, and we'll make it a grey color. So pound CCC semicolon. I'm going to set a padding all around the image, a buffer zone of 5 pixels, and we're going to set the position to absolute. I'm also going to set a Z index to make sure it stays on the very top of everything. So that'll be Z index colon 999. Set a margin to the top, and I'm going to set minus 25 pixels. So that'll appear minus 25 pixels from our cursor. I'm going to set a display to none. And so that's in case the JavaScript file doesn't load up on any occasion. It won't show that image up automatically and ruin our web page. Now I'm going to set a Moz border, so dash Moz, dash border, dash radius. I'm going to give some nice rounded edges, so I'm going to set 5 pixels of border radius there. And I'll set a box shadow as well, so dash Moz, dash box, dash shadow, colon, 5 pixels, 5 pixels, 12 pixels, blur radius. And we'll set a pound 666, which is a darker grey colour there. Now for Chrome and Safari, you'll have to look up the codes for the border radius and shadow there. They are available on my website. I have made a tutorial showing you how to do those. Now I'm going to set the width of the image that appears to be 600 pixels, and that'll be a nice smaller image rather than that huge gigantic one that appeared earlier. So let's preview that in Firefox now. And let's hover over the image, and there we go. We've got a nice image tooltip, a nice zoom effects preview for our product's rotator, and I think that looks really good with the shadow. Let's just stop one of the images and preview that. There we go. We've got a nice shadow there. We've got a white background. We've got our curved corners. It's looking really good. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed this image product rotator and tooltip tutorial. There's plenty more tutorial to come over the course of the year. So if you've liked it, please leave a comment and please rate this video. This has been James from dreamweavertutorial.co.uk, and there'll be full written explanation and further opacity settings on my website. So go to dreamweavertutorial.co.uk. Thank you very much. I'll see you next time.